All right, Hastings, you are in for a real treat because my special guest today is my cousin, Dan Lehmann. And if you're fancy enough to have your name embroidered on a chef jacket, you must know what you're doing. So Dan, let's get started. All right, so like I said, I have a special guest in my kitchen today, and it's my cousin, Dan. And Dan is actually a professional chef, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So what does it mean to be a professional chef?
So the biggest thing for us in our industry is not only working in a kitchen that's actually of a professional kitchen, but to also, for me, I think there's a lot of loose terms as far as like to become a chef or to be a chef, because for me it was actually a crucial thing of going to culinary school and actually learning what it means to have the fundamentals to become a chef. And for me it's like there's kind of the ideas of, you know, I am a chef because professionally what I do, I have the diploma that states that I am a chef. I have gone to school, I have learned the trade of cooking, and that is what's important to us.
Awesome. So he is a great teacher to have visiting Hastings today to let us know about some culinary terms and what it really means to produce a quality product. So you've got a lovely spread around you. What are we going to make today?
Yeah, so actually our focus is actually going to be on a tri-tip sirloin.
Okay.
This is actually from a local farm, actually out of Idaho.
Okay.
The Snake River Farms, they are actually working a lot with now the Fish Guys out of Minneapolis. And so it's really cool that the Fish Guys as a company are actually really trying to tie in more than just fish.
How do you kind of shop well in a supermarket for the best kind of food?
The best spot to go to for actually, if you were to say, for example, steak, best place to go to is to just shop locally through your local butchers, shops, meat markets, to really find some cool proteins, because sometimes they do offer actually some really high-end proteins.
Okay.
This being the perfect example actually from Snake River Farms. This is actually another cut just from the local grocery store.
So we've got a spaghetti squash, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are we going to do to this, buddy?
So this is actually going to be one of kind of, besides our sauce, this is actually going to be one of the just base vegetables for the dish, and then it'll just be kind of the foundation of building up the dish itself.
Okay, awesome.
It does take a bit of strength to just kind of get through this. Obviously you're going to want to use a hardier knife, more of a chef's knife, to actually kind of cut through the vegetable itself.
Looks delicious.
And the inside. So best way to get after this is actually to literally just take a spoon and get after the inside, just to get out all the seeds, so that way you can actually just roast this off.
So a lot like cleaning a pumpkin.
Absolutely. And it's crucial actually to not get too much of the inside, because that is a lot of where the meat of the vegetable is.
Okay. And so some squash you can eat the outside skin. Is this the squash that you're going to do that with?
No, this is actually more so, it will tenderize quite a bit, but it's actually really just everything from within the skin. Exactly. That'll be the meat and the focal point of what we would actually have on the dish. So the next part of the spaghetti squash is actually really key and crucial, that you season the whole squash itself, even inside and out.
Okay.
We're literally just going to season this actually with a little bit of olive oil. And I actually really like to use a blend of oils that are extra virgin, canola, and actually grapeseed oil. It's just kind of really gives a really great profile, but it also has a little bit of a higher smoke content or heat preventative.
So you can go higher in your oven.
Right, exactly.
And is that something you can buy ready-made, or do you kind of have your 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 mix?
There are a lot of stores that will actually provide a blended oil of some kind, or you can most certainly blend your own oils at home. It's definitely nothing hard. Simple blender or immersion blender will definitely take care of just kind of blending your own oils and doing what you need to do.
Very cool.
We'll just simply place these squash on a sheet pan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then we'll just wrap them with the tin foil there, and then we'll put them in the oven at about 400 degrees for about 35 to 45 minutes, or about until fork tender.
All right. We'll tuck these in their foil beds, and then we'll tuck it in the oven and check on it in a little bit. So it looks like we're in the market for side dish number 2.
Yeah, that's right. the next part of our dish is actually going to be Brussels sprouts.
Okay.
So just another great seasonal thing for us to have, and just kind of a fan favorite for some of the restaurants that I know that I've either been to or been at, and so.
Well, and it's crazy because I have never prepared Brussels sprouts before, so I'm excited for this.
Yeah, the biggest thing with these is actually they're super simple to prep. There's nothing too difficult about them. Biggest thing actually being literally just trimming off a little bit of the root and then simplistically just cutting them in half.
Oh.
Some of these outer leaves you can obviously discard. Some of them are not up to quality or what have you. So we can just toss those aside, but it's literally just the literal half of the Brussels sprout.
Oh, interesting.
And then we'll actually just literally going to be tossing these in some olive oil, salt and pepper, brown sugar, and actually a little bit of red wine, port wine as well.
Oh.
This will just kind of give the Brussels sprouts a little bit of sweetness, but savory aspects to just kind of complement the dish.
Very cool. So we've got them trimmed and halved, and now we get your fancy spice blend.
Yeah, right. So fancy is more simplistic than not.
Yeah.
Just a nice little sprinkle of some sea salt, some fresh cracked pepper, a little bit of brown sugar. The brown sugar really helps to just bring out some sweetness in the Brussels sprouts, and Brussels sprouts will actually naturally caramelize as well.
Oh, interesting.
So a little bit of our olive oil blend. Port wine is just a really good wine to use for cooking. Any generic port wine works just fine. This is obviously just another simplistic generic wine,
Yep.
port wine, but
It was on the end cap at the liquor store.
exactly. No need to spend a bunch of money on a higher
Doesn't
end.
even, okay, it's just a twist off top.
Right.
Easy. All right. You don't even need to own a corkscrew.
So just a small amount of the port wine is just fine. We're obviously not going to try to dredge these in this. Just to lightly pick up some of the wine itself, because the Brussels sprouts with their leaves, they do have a little bit of some porous innards on them, so that way they can pick up some of that flavor profile.
Gotcha. And because we're gonna roast these in the oven and they have all of the oil on there already, do we have to do anything to get our pan ready, or can we just dump and go?
I'm actually going to just put a little bit of the oil just lightly on the pan just to help prevent from sticking.
We don't hate cleanup at the end?
Right, exactly. So we'll just rub down the pan a little bit with some of the oil, and then we will just pick up these Brussels sprouts a little bit, not to get too much of the excess wine on. And we're also actually going to just place these Brussels sprouts face down. This will actually just help.
That's something I know how to do.
That'll actually just really help kind of caramelize the Brussels sprouts on the one side and not to really burn on the outside from the inside of the Brussels sprouts.
So with this caramelizing, does that mean that Brussels sprouts have like a higher sugar content in them?
They do a little bit, and it's actually more so, that is also kind of why the other sugar, the brown sugar, to help kind of give a little bit help in the
with that?
Right, to actually help out with a little bit of that caramelization process.
All right. So I'm guessing this is going to tag team with our spaghetti squash.
Correct.
And so how long is this going to go into the oven then?
The Brussels sprouts should only take about 15 to 20 minutes on 400 with the spaghetti squash, so they shouldn't take too long.
Gotcha. All right. Let's work on this fancy protein then.
Yeah.
So we have this delicious cut of meat. So what are we going to do to get it ready for our pan?
Right, so the best thing for any protein is, everybody kind of thinks, oh, well, you gotta doctor it up with some special seasoning. The best simplistic thing you can do for steak is literally just salt and pepper.
Easy.
And probably a little bit of olive oil. So we'll just take some of our sea salt here and generously season all sides of it. It is super important that you season all of these sides to really pick up that flavor. We'll also do some fresh cracked pepper. And then I typically always do rub down just a little bit with olive oil just to get it started. It really kind of helps adhere all of the salt and pepper to the steak. Gotcha. And then the pan itself we will start with olive oil as well, the oil blend. And then I will actually be basting this steak in with butter. This time of season, it's not always imperative that everybody wants to go out and grill, so it's just kind of like, this is just another great way to have an indoor steak experience to also just have for this season that it is.
So let's get this puppy searing.
Yeah.
So you've got your Would you say glazing your meat right now?
Right, literally just basting it with butter. So I've also got some just fresh garlic cloves in here also, as long as some fresh thyme. This is just literally for aromatic purposes. It really just helps the beef pick up some better flavor. Just another element to give to the dish.
So now that we've got it out of our pan, how are we going to finish off our meat?
Right, so we'll actually just place this simplistically on a sheet pan and we'll let it roast off in the oven for about another 15 to 20 minutes or so.
And do we have to do anything to protect our pan, or are we just good to go to plop and shove?
Yeah, no, we'll actually take the steak, put it on the sheet pan, and place it in the oven.
Easy peasy. So I'm guessing we're going to want to bring this all together with some kind of sauce.
Right, correct. Actually, we're going to be taking the pan that we seared our steak in, and we're actually going to make a tomato and red wine sauce.
Nice.
Just simple flavor profiles, nothing too complicated, and just really kind of elevate a little bit of acidity to add to the steak.
Very cool.
But all we're going to simplistically do is just cut them in half. And then they're going to go right into the pan. We'll just saute them up a little bit, get some nice caramelization on them, and then we'll add in some of the garlic and shallot.
Okay. And do we have to break those down at all, or do they just go in like a big bump?
So what we'll do for the shallots and the garlic is best thing to do with garlic is to just give it a nice little slice, and the shallots will also just actually give a julienne, because at the end of this, with the sauce, we're really just going to take an immersion blender and just kind of blend it all together. So your cuts aren't too imperative, but you do want to give a little bit of a cut just to be able to really have the flavor profiles come out in with the two.
Gotcha. Do you want it on medium, low, burn your face?
About medium high would be actually really great.
Not burn your face?
Molten lava, heat seeking would be great, actually.
Okay, good.
So we'll take the pan and we'll add our tomatoes. We'll just get a nice little caramelization on these to really help bring out the sweetness. It's also super important to season as you go with all of this, just because it'll really help bring out the flavors in the dish as a whole. So now the tomatoes are pretty well cooked down. These will obviously continue to still cook, but we're going to add in our garlic and shallots here and let these cook in a little bit more until they also kind of pick up that caramelization color, and then we'll add in our red wine. So next we'll actually just transfer our sauce into this bowl, and then we're just going to immersion blend it to just incorporate everything together to make a smoother sauce.
And obviously, if you don't have an immersion blender at home, you could use a regular blender as well.
Right.
Smells delicious, looks appealing. I bet we're gonna put it all on a plate together.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll just kind of go over little fundamentals of building the plate and just kind of actually putting everything together.
Awesome.
So actually first, the squash that we've taken out of the oven and it's actually ready. The biggest thing with squash is actually literally just take it from the skin and just take a fork and just peel it away from that skin.
And it's great too because you can smell that rosemary that you put into that cavity when we roasted it early too.
Right. To be as gentle as you can, actually taking it out without really damaging too much of it, to really keep some of the fundamental structure of the squash together is a super good thing. And that's pretty much about all that really comes out of this one half. We're actually just gonna season this up a little bit more with just a little bit more salt. It's super critical to make sure that before you're obviously presenting a dish or tasting or serving a dish, to make sure that you're seasoning everything before it hits the plate.
And now we definitely have that whole spaghetti vibe going with our spaghetti squash.
Right, for sure. And it's super important that when you're slicing any steak to go against the grain. This just creates a better mouthfeel for the guest, and it just is an easier bite to take out of the steak.
And so after you took this out of the oven, you left it rest for a little while. What's like optimum resting time?
So always kind of a good rule of thumb is to let your proteins rest for about five minutes or so, 5-10 minutes, depending on obviously the size.
Yep.
Is always just kind of a good rule of thumb to really give for the steak. So now that we have the steak sliced, we're actually going to start off with our sauce. We'll go right in the middle of the plate. We're actually just going to create a little bit of a well. And then we'll take our spaghetti squash. We'll just kind of twirl this around a little bit. And then we'll go right in the center of our sauce.
Very cool. So you've got upside down spaghetti right now?
Right. We'll add our Brussels sprouts. And then to top off, we'll add our steak.
Very fancy.
Just like that.
Very nice. And so if we think about everything we made today, is this like a serving for one person, two people? What do we think?
Right, well, most restaurants, depending on how you go about it and how big your portion size you want to be, this is definitely something that you could present as just for one person.
Okay.
Probably about anywhere from about an 8 to 10 ounce piece of portion of meat, and then also just kind of about general rule of thumb, about a 4 to 6 ounce portion of vegetables with some sort of sauce.
Awesome. And so really, with everything we've done today, you've got a complete meal with some simple ingredients and some quality products and basically delicious results.
Right, absolutely.
Awesome.
The biggest thing about everything is just keep the food simplistic and don't overdo anything. Really just kind of tend to the ingredients that you're using and just seasonal ingredients to make sure that they are at the freshest quality that you can get.
Very nice. Well, thank you so very much for being in my kitchen today, Dan. And remember, Hastings, the apron's optional, but the flavor isn't. Plating, 8. 8? 8.